Today on Locked On Canadiens, an emergency bonus episode because Justin Barron just got traded.
You're Locked On Canadiens, your daily podcast on the Montreal Canadiens, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hi there, everyone, and welcome to a special emergency bonus episode of Locked On Canadiens. My name is Laura Sav, also known as The Active Stick, and I'm joined by the wonderful Ian Boisvert, peek behind the curtain. We literally just finished recording our Thursday episode. So if you're listening to our Thursday episode wondering why we're not talking about the Justin Barron trade, it's because we're talking about it right now. It's Thursday night. Wednesday night. We're dropping this on Wednesday night. Your Thursday episode will not have any Justin Barron content. That's why we have a special extra one for you. Ian, how are you? I just spoke to you, but How are you in the face of that news?
This is the first emergency show of my era. Gotta say, don't really love how that feels to get through the show. And we're talking about hat tricks after the show, just going through guys, and you're like, Ian, stop. They just traded Justin Barron. And then it's back into work mode. So, I'd like to tip my cap to Kent Hughes and company for making us work overtime.
Very much so. In fairness, this has happened to us before. We finished recording an entire episode once, and the Jeff Petrie trade, the first Jeff Petrie trade of the Canadiens era.
I love how
There's
we have
three of them. Oh my god!
I love how we have to break them up like that. Like, which one? Well, the one where he got traded in a cap dump. That doesn't help. I don't know which one that is still.
All right, so Montreal Canadiens defenseman Justin Barron has been traded. That's not surprising. We watched Justin Barron struggle to find a fit on this team. So, and we talked about it on this episode, nothing against the guy. It's just that whatever he did, he didn't seem to fit in this team. I do think, though, that the fact that they traded for him, and they traded him away so soon, the Lehkonen trade's kind of a wash right now.
Yeah. They needed Barron to hit for that trade to have mattered. It always felt like they were pushing Lehkonen out the door a little bit sooner than they needed to. And this kind of solidifies that. Now, I will say, we can rehash the Lehkonen trade all we want. That's not really, I don't think it's too helpful of an exercise at this point in time, but I think it's the first time this front office has sort of waved the white flag and admitted defeat on a trade or any kind of player movement, right? It's the first time that they've said this just isn't going to work here. And it was obvious throughout the season that it just wasn't going to work here. Going back to the preseason, we were sitting here saying he's running out of time. Barron is running out of time to make a difference in Montreal.
Right. And last year he was inconsistent. It's not that he had played himself out of the conversation last year. He was just inconsistent. Sometimes we saw him in the future. Sometimes we didn't.
Yeah, exactly. So, I Justin Barron seems like a good guy. I hope he's headed into a situation where, maybe he'll get a little bit more leash in Nashville. It's tough to think that team cares too much about defense right now. They can't score goals. If Barron hits in the way that people think he can as a player, that's a player that Nashville can want, right?
Right. But it's still not going to solve that problem. No.
Justin Barron is not making the Nashville Predators a competent offensive team on his own or at all. It's not, but I think from a Nashville's perspective, they're trying to make a move in that direction, because looking at the Canadiens, why they don't need a player like that, right? They have Lane Hudson, who seems to be the premier offensive defenseman of his era right now. Mike Matheson's doing Mike Matheson things and will likely continue to do so for a while. And if Logan Mailloux hits the way that they think he will, he's going to be that right-hand shot offensive D. So Barron needed to make a stand, and his inconsistencies and his inability to be trusted defensively did not help him. He just, that sort of sealed the deal from the Canadiens' perspective. So I think that this is just a case of a player who ran out of time.
Ian, forgive me if this was you, but I truly forget. In a conversation, somebody asked, I don't get why they keep playing Justin Barron. I think that's why. They were showcasing him. He was on the block.
Yeah.
They were showcasing him. So again, I'm sorry if you were the one that asked that question. I literally do not remember which conversations happened in.
No, I think I did an episode or two ago. It was like, why is he playing? Like, I don't understand. Like, he went from we can't play him at all to now playing consecutive games.
Yes.
It never made a ton of sense.
Yeah. Particularly leaving Struble out.
Right. Yeah. Struble, who I think they use that as they use Struble as like a convenient moment to get Barron back into the lineup because like Struble made a couple mistakes and they were like, okay, we've seen enough. Barron has to go in now. Wink. Right.
Yeah.
Like, it felt like to me, it was like he made a couple of defensive mistakes. So you're fixed it. It's Justin Barron. Like none of that tracked. So now in retrospect, looking back on it, it kind of makes sense that they were, showing an NHL team, hey, this guy can play in the NHL. And to Barron's credit, he has looked okay the last few games, right? Like he hasn't out of that trade. Nashville.
Maybe they promised him. They promised him he was getting out, so he's like, "Yeah,
yeah." You get to the whole low. I don't think there's income tax in Tennessee. I think that's another southern state where you make all of your paycheck.
If it is, it's low.
Right.
But okay, so you were listening to an emergency podcast episode where Justin Barron just got traded. We are providing our instant reaction. Ian, real quick, does this make the Canadiens better either immediately or in the long term?
I think immediately it does. How much that matters in the grand scheme of things is up for debate. From what I've seen, and Scott is being a good trooper for us and sending along information as he gets it, but the isolated impact charts that Mika Blake McCurdy, Ineffective Math, puts out, they show that Alex Carrier has very limited offensive upside, but is a bit stronger defensively than Justin Barron, who wasn't hitting on the offensive side of the puck, and he certainly wasn't hitting on the defensive side of the puck. So he was kind of a no-win player for Montreal. If Carrier is a right-hand shot defenseman, he's 28 years old. If he can come in and play that role and play that role well, they're going to be fine. I kind of look at this as maybe someone who can eat minutes that David Savard shouldn't be having at this stage, right? Like that's sort of, to me anyway, because I mean, they were just riding David Savard for so many games. He was the only right-hand shot defenseman in the lineup. And David Savard, at the peak of his career, shouldn't be the only right-hand shot defenseman in your lineup. We can't be doing it now. So, I think it's a good move right now.
Coming up in just a moment here on Locked On Canadiens emergency bonus episode. We're going to talk a little bit about what that's going to look like with him in the lineup. He's currently on injured reserve, but we're going to get into that in just one moment here on Locked On Canadiens. But first, this episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You hear us talk about FanDuel a lot, and there's a reason for that. That's because it is America's #1 sportsbook. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL and us. Welcome back to a bonus special episode of Locked On Canadiens. We are reacting to Justin Barron being traded. If you are listening to or watching this episode, you will know that we have already recorded our Thursday episode, and so the Justin Barron trade reaction has to go in a standalone the night before. So our Thursday episode will not feature this trade, but luckily it was all about prospects, so we did not actually talk about Justin Barron being in the lineup or anything like that, or the fact that they need to trade him. But there is a Thursday episode. It's an isolated standalone prospect episode. Also, I would be remiss if I did not remind everybody that our mailbag episode is going to feature a special guest, Scott Matla, previously of Locked On Canadiens. Send us your mailbag questions at lockedoncanadiens@gmail.com. Find us on Blue Sky, TikTok, or Instagram at Locked On Canadiens. Send us your questions there. Send them in the YouTube comments. Send us mailbag questions. All right, back to the Justin Barron trade. Real quick, Ian. We were just talking a little bit about him being on IR, and when he comes back into the lineup, he will provide, I guess, better defensive numbers or a better defensive play than Justin Barron did. And I do kind of want to point out one thing. We have criticized the defense, and not necessarily blame them, but place some responsibility on their inability to play defense for a lot of the losses and a lot of the, losing the lead or a lot of, squandering leads or things like that. A big reason for that was just they could not get the puck out of their zone. And
Yeah.
it's an identified issue. So I think for me, this is Kent Hughes. Like, this is what he did. He changed something in the defense. He improved them a little bit, right? Like a little, like we just talked about in our previous segment. But there's also a bunch of things he did not do. He did not trade away David Savard when he's going to have more value at the trade deadline when other GMs are fighting over him because he's the kind of guy everyone likes to go into the playoffs with. He didn't do that. The other thing, too, though, is that he didn't leave the same amount of responsibility that's currently on David Savard's shoulders for the rest of the season, right? So you talked a little bit about him picking up the slack for David Savard because David Savard should not be playing as much as he does. This is going to alleviate some of that pressure off of him. He didn't do that either. So he didn't do that. He also didn't panic trade Mike Matheson, which, people are calling for him to do, but I do think that Kent Hughes understands Mike Matheson's value to this team. He traded for him for a reason. And I think until there's somebody there who can play the same responsibility as Mike Matheson, ideally better than Mike Matheson, but can play that responsibility, like whatever they task him with. And another thing they did not do is they did not shake up any of their future defense. They're giving all of these other guys a lot of time to cook, right? Anyone who's in the pipeline, who's, ready or might be ready or will be ready a year or two from now, they didn't squander any of that. They literally looked at Justin Barron and said, where is this guy going to be in the next 2 years? Is he a fit on the Montreal Canadiens? The answer was no. They got rid of him, but they did not hold back their progress and their rebuild in any way.
Yeah. I agree with especially with the idea that they didn't give up anything that was a significant portion of their future because they had kind of bailed on the idea of Justin Barron being a significant portion of their future. One thing that I looked at earlier this week or last week was NHL GMs who make trades mid-season involving NHL players, which has kind of become important because now we're looking at on the same day, the Rangers just traded Capo Caco to Seattle. And I was kind of wondering, well, that's weird. There's two trades in the same day. That's because the holiday roster freeze is on the 19th. So as you're listening to this, maybe on Thursday, that's why they had to move these guys now. Is because if you don't, then you have to wait until essentially the new year to trade them. But anyway, to my first point, Kent Hughes doesn't do this. He doesn't make trades in season with NHL players. This is now his 32nd trade, but leading up to this, he had made 31 trades. Only 10 of them were in-season trades. So, this isn't something that he does. The most notable examples.
How many of them included NHL players?
Right, that's what I mean. The ones that include NHL players. Those numbers include those. But most of those are selling trades, right? It's them, it's Sean Monahan, it's Tyler Toffoli. It's, that's not this sort of deal. The ones that stand out to me as like he's making a trade to improve the team now is sort of the Evgeny Dodonov for Denis Gurianov trade, although you can just say those were expiring assets. They were trying to, find a new place for them. But the other two were the Andrew Hammond trades. When the team needed a goalie and he was like, Andrew Hammond, fine, we'll get him. Like, does that not sort of feel like this? Like, we need a right-hand shot defenseman. Okay, fine, Alex Carrier. Like, that's sort of what it feels like. But
I forgot the Hammond era.
Yeah, the Hammond era was short-lived. But Carrier has, he's got some term. He's got 2 years after this one at $3.75 million. Like we said, right-hand shot defenseman. Currently on injured reserve, I think with a shoulder injury, if I had read correctly. Like I said, we are just upper body injury. We are doing this by the seat of our pants.
The trade literally just happened 20 minutes ago.
Right, right. So I think it's indicative of Kent Hughes saying that he thinks maybe this team can achieve a little bit more with some steady defensemen.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe it's a sign that we are done seeing Caden Gooley play the right side.
I hope so.
That maybe this is Lane Hudson and Mike Matheson for the rest of for the next little while. And maybe Caden Gooley has a nice, solid, steady defensive player to play with, where maybe we can start to see that offensive side of Caden Gooley's game that we've been, promised for the last few years that just hasn't materialized, unfortunately, because he's been given these assignments. So that's sort of where I'm at on this trade. I think it's Kent Hughes recognizing a deficiency in his roster that is actively harming the team now. He doesn't hurt the team in the long run. I am curious as to when he'll play. You don't need him immediately because you can put Jaden Struble in for now, but I'm kind of wondering when he'll show up and be able to play in Montreal.
All right, Ian, I have one more question for you before we end our special bonus episode. What are the chances that the Habs front office, Kent Hughes, Jeff Gordon, or someone in the Habs front office is still stalking you all over social media, as well as any podcast that you appear on, and then taking your ideas and doing what you said?
Yeah, a couple weeks ago in the Game Over chat, I posted after, was it the Nashville game? It might have been the Nashville game. It might have been afterwards.
That would be really funny.
But I was sort of like, Nashville's imploding. When are we going to pick something off their carcass? Why not Alex Carrier? And because he right-hand shot defenseman from Montreal, just do it. Like, it makes sense. I didn't think Barron would be going the other way, but it made sense to me. Like, they are a team that is struggling mightily and are probably looking to, their future a little bit more now. That would be a player I would target. And it looks like the Canadiens also agreed, just as they did with Patrick Laine, but that's neither here nor there.
Yeah. So either Kent Hughes is a massive K-Mom fan, who wouldn't be?
Yeah.
Who wouldn't be?
Get in line.
Or he's stalking you. Those are my theories. Also, speaking of the wonderful K-Mom of Game Over, I almost said of Locked On Canadiens, of Game Over / the Locked On Canadiens Extended Universe. On our Wednesday episode, I accused Kay, or implied, I think I accused you, but I implied Kay had appointed herself president of Caden Gooley Nation. In fact, she was elected democratically. So I'm setting the record straight for that. In the meantime, everybody, thank you for listening to this special bonus episode. As I said, our Thursday episode does not have Justin Barron traded content because we heard about the trade, and I'm not kidding you. 3 minutes later, we started recording this episode. So thank you so much. As you know, you can subscribe to our podcast wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on YouTube. We're free and available as part of the Locked On Podcast Network. You will find us all over social media at Locked On Canadiens. We are on Instagram. We are on TikTok. We are on Blue Sky. Our email is lockedoncanadiens@gmail.com. Send us your mailbag questions. Send us your questions on YouTube. You'll find me on all over social media at The Active Stick. You'll find my wonderful co-host at Ian Bover. At maybe it's Ian. Listen, at this point we've recorded, we are playing a playoff amount of defenseman minutes right now. We've been recording for 50 minutes. I'm not kidding. Ian Boisvert, you'll find him at maybe it's Ian all over social media, and you want to follow him and listen to him because clearly the Montreal Canadiens do. Thank you so much for listening. We will talk to you very shortly as our Thursday episode drops.